Hi there, hello, my name's Lines, great to see you. Now, today we're going to be going through facial expressions. We're going to go through how they're made from a mechanical standpoint, as well as then how you can make them yourself using an understanding of directions of motion, and how to study those directions of motion from references. We'll then go through and do a demonstration piece entirely built around interacting facial expressions. And there's also going to be a homework sheet for you to have a go at. The principles we've gone over here, and you can post them in the Discord, and I'll leave a link to that Discord in the description down below. So do pop in, share the work you've done. We've got a great community there for you to share your art, and a lot of really friendly people around, and I'm there quite often myself, so I look forward to catching you in there. And if you like what you see, and you'd like to see it more often or more reliably, consider supporting the channel by liking, subscribing, or joining us over on Patreon. To the people who have joined the Patreon, I really do appreciate the support. It's been allowing me to produce more of these videos more often, and dedicate time to it as a full-time job. That's something I'm really grateful for. And so for those of you assisting in that or any other way, like liking the video or subscribing, I really am incredibly grateful. Thank you again. Now, if you have any questions or comments or feedback, or even just ideas for videos or things you'd like to see in future, leave a comment down below. I read absolutely all of them, respond to almost all of them, and so I look forward to seeing what you have to say down there. So, to begin with, I want to talk about what expression is and how we are going to use it. Primarily, expression is how you communicate the feelings of a character, and how that then serves whatever narrative or implied narrative you have in your image. For this video, we're not going to cover how to draw the head. I already have a great video on that, and I'll link that in the description, as well as hopefully have a tile pop up here. Now, the key element of expression isn't just adding sadness or adding happiness, etc. It's about communicating who your character is. Different characters are going to react in different ways to the same thing. One character may see something and find it hilarious. Another character may see the same thing and find that to be shocking. And another character again may see the exact same thing, but their reaction may be to find it confronting in another way. The emotion a character shows is as much about communicating who they are as it is about communicating what they feel. As far as the mechanics of expression go, a lot of it has to do with the musculature of the face and how it fits over the bones. The other thing to remember is that while the head and the skull tend to be quite static and immovable, the jaw does move, and this then changes the shape of the head and the length of the head, as well as the options for how open or closed the mouth is and how that'll change the angle of the teeth viewed inside it. There's a lot of dynamism to the movement of the jaw, and it's important to keep this in mind when we're drawing the face. Now, with this video, I'm starting with my understanding of expression, which draws quite heavily from Scott McCloud, who has made an awesome book called Making Comic, as well as a few other awesome books, which I really recommend everyone purchase, read. The man is a saint and deserves to be paid, so do pick up a copy of one of his books if you get a chance. They're fantastic. Now, with that family of learning comes expression that starts in 6 families, with a neutral expression as well, and then branches out from there. You can see here that we have angry, disgusted, scared, happy, sad, and surprised. Now, with each of these not being an end point, but rather these are all a starting point from which more expressions can branch out. As an example, we can branch out happy into laughter, we can branch it out again into pride or smugness, we can also make a hybrid emotion between it and sadness of happy tears, and we can keep branching them out with things like cruelty or cheekiness or other options as well. So, to begin with then, let's talk about some of the base expressions and how to do them. We're going to be basing this not on drawing eyes a certain way or eyebrows a certain way. What I want us to do is think of expressions as the face being moved along regions of motion. So then, let's start with angry. Now with an angry expression, you're going to notice that everything pulls in towards the center of the face. The lips, the nose, the eyes, the eyebrows, all of them are drawn in like there's a mini black hole of gravity pulling in and wrinkling the brow and bridge of the nose, narrowing the eyes towards the center, and lifting the lips up in a snarl towards that center point alongside the nose, in the middle of the face. All the movement is going to gather in at that one point. Next, we're going to cover one of the more nuanced ones, but definitely one of the more useful, and this is disgust. Disgust looks a lot like someone closing all the holes in their face to stop anything gross from getting in. You'll notice that the mouth will purse closed tightly, the eyes and eyebrows will compress down and maybe close, and the cheeks will then lift up to help narrow the eyes. And even though the cheeks are pulling away, the mouth can stay closed or close to closed. And disgust can be mild, or it can be extreme. Now the next one we have is fear. Now with fear, we're going to push the eyebrows down, but lift up just the inner corners a bit. We're going to widen the eyes, and then, with 2 lines stretching down from the corners of the nose, we're going to widen the mouth down and out a little bit. This is another great chance for us to use things like smaller irises, which we'll talk about a little bit later as to why we do that, but we can use this as a way of increasing intensity. Remember that we don't want to go with too much symmetry. An expression that is too symmetrical can be a bit boring, and if it's asymmetrical, that can really add dynamism and expression, with symmetry being a little less organic and therefore a little more mechanical. Next, we'll go through the expression of happiness. Now this one is very straightforward. We're going to lift the eyes and the eyebrows up with 2 lines of force coming up from the cheeks, through the eyes and up through the eyebrows, and now the mouth, we're going to pull it up at the corners towards the cheekbones, leading into those upward flows along the eyes. A lot of the smile and happy expression happens around the outside edge of the face and doesn't really tend to affect the nose or the center line of the face as much. It's all about that movement up from the corners of the mouth, straight up through the eyes, up through the brows and onto the forehead. You can even add a bit of a wrinkle on the forehead to communicate that upward movement and compression. Next, let's add sadness. To start with, we're going to bring everything on the upper half of the face downwards. We're going to have the forehead pushing down and the eyebrows coming down, but again, lifting up a little in the corners and maybe down on the edges. Then, for the lower half of the face, below the eyes, we're going to pull up the corners of the nose towards the center between the eyes, but for the mouth, we're going to have the outside edges pushing out and down diagonally, but the middle of the mouth will push upwards. We can have the mouth open or closed. If someone is crying, their mouth will tend to open, but it opens out and down, and they can have a quivering lip or they can have it pursed very tightly. Then, we've got one of the really easy expressions. This one is surprise. With this expression, everything on the eyes will lift up and get wider from the eyes all the way to the top of the forehead, and the eyes will also widen down. And the mouth will also get wider or taller, being pulled at the very top and bottom like 2 bits of string, making it longer and wider. Now this is also another opportunity for you to narrow the irises. It helps bring some intensity to the face. And with the mouth opening wide, it can help to show the teeth on the face. And now, you can see with these forces, we've been able to put together a few expressions. And since we're not learning different tiles or different replacement parts like a Mr. Potato Head, we're learning the forces that move the elements and distort them on the face. And we can apply these to any face you like. The next thing is to show some demonstrations of some variants within this. Now, there are an infinite number of variations you can make. I'm just going to go through a couple of demonstrations for each one. For example, we can take the angry face, and we can give it some raised eyebrows like it's happy, and then pull the mouth up towards the corners like they're happy as well. Now this one can give a really good impression of cruelty or sadism. And alternately, if we were to mix angry with sad, we can get a look of deep betrayal. If we had sad eyebrows and a sad mouth, we can communicate someone who has been utterly betrayed. And all the expressions will do this. As another example, let's take disgust and add some lower eyebrows. And we'll pull the mouth open and down to the sides like sadness. And then we can have someone who isn't just disgusted, but they're morally appalled at whatever horrifying things they're seeing in front of them. Or we can take disgust and mix it with happy. This is one of my favorites from Scott McCloud's book. It communicates the joy of seeing something that's kind of gross but funny. His official naming for it is ew, which I think is brilliant. Next, if we take fear and mix it up a bit, one of the first things we can mix it with is happiness. If we take the mouth and replace it with a smile, we then make a desperate smile, a real sense of desperation. But then, if we take a look at fear and we add to it some sadness, we can show absolute heartbreak and dejection. If we then mix joy and add elements of surprise by widening the mouth and rounding it off a little, and open the eyes out wide and lifting the eyebrows and adding some wrinkles to the forehead, we can take them from surprised to absolutely awestruck. Or, if we add sadness and close the eyes and purse the lips, we have a happy, tearful smile. With sadness, if we mix it with surprise, we can have someone receiving terrible news who is distraught or appalled. We can mix it with a bit of disgust and have someone who is hiding their irritation. Or, we can mix surprise with anger to make someone who is affronted or shocked. We can make the surprise even more severe by narrowing the mouth to have someone go from surprised to experiencing a sudden shock. Now, after that, it's worth looking at how we can use this understanding and then use that to learn from real life. If we were to take some reference images and use them for practice, instead of trying to copy the shapes and outlines of the elements of the face, what we instead need to look at is the directions of movement around the face. So, if you look at this gentleman here, you can see that his eyes are being pushed up and closed around the corners of the nose. And the mouth is opening wide, and the lips are being lifted up next to the nose. And the lower lip is being opened wide, and the jaw is opening as well. And we can apply those movements to our own expression. Now, without trying to copy the lines we see, we just try to look at the movement and flow and directions of tension that we see. Now, let's do that again with this woman here. We can see that her eyes are coming up in the middle and going down on the outside edges. And her eyes are being pulled open wide. And then her mouth is being opened by being pulled down diagonally from the bottom corners. So, if we take this and apply it to a head of our own design, in whatever style we like, we can take it further, even by narrowing the irises, or by keeping in mind these directions of flow. And here we have a woman with a very stern expression, where her brow is being pushed down straight, and her eyes are narrowing, and there's a slight tilt to the shape of the mouth. Now, if we take these elements and apply them to even a drastically different face, we can make a very disappointed ancient elf man by furrowing the brow, tilting the mouth, and pulling up a little wrinkle towards the nose, just like in the reference picture. The other thing to remember is, just like how we remixed the emotions in the pieces we did before when we were demonstrating the archetypes, we can remix these references. So if we make a face based on the direction of movement of this face, but then adjust it to something we want to do, something else. We're not pinned down by the emotion or reaction of the reference image. We can use that as a jumping off point if we remember how to modify these base expressions to communicate different variants of those feelings. Now we can also take very gentle expressions like this woman here and then enhance and push them even further. We can take this look of mild disapproval and then make a very, very severe expression on a very, very severe looking face by simply translating the directions of movement in the face. Now similarly, with this bearded gentleman, we can take the motion and openness of the expression and apply that, the directions of flow, to our own illustration of a character. That's a very stylized and isn't really very realistic at all. But we can still translate it so long as we keep in mind things like where to position the teeth, where to position the neck, and how to flow the expression. And so you can see with these, so long as we keep in mind the base methods that face can be moved around on, we can start taking inspiration from anything, from reference photos or other illustrators, and we can break them down into directions of motion on the face, or where they're being pulled and where they're moving. Rather than just having stickers for angry eyes and stickers for angry mouths, we can think instead about the directions of force and motion that change the shape of these elements. Now another thing I want to say is never be afraid to make a face get ugly and wrinkly when there's strong emotion. If you get too attached to a face being pretty, it will be boring. Go ugly, go weird, and the character will be what makes it appealing. Don't worry about making a character ugly if it makes them more expressive and communicates well. Remix. And remember to remix any expressions to ensure that you're getting just the right kind of communication for the mood you're wanting to get across. So don't take these starting points and end points. Now the next thing I want to touch base on is some of the little accessories you can add to an expression. So in cartooning you'll notice there are things you can add that are not things that actually happen in real life, but they can help you communicate the mood. So some examples of these, the more common ones, would be things like narrowing the iris. This is an exaggeration of something that does happen in real life. It's when someone's eyes widen and the whites of the eyes become visible. Given there's whites of the eyes, making it look more intense, you can further extend that by shrinking the iris. Now, a real person's iris can't shrink, but these are cartoon characters, we can do whatever we like. The next expression is a bit of an anime classic. It's a little sweat drop. This is have the feeling of like sighing or being put upon. Then we can do things like casting a shadow over the upper part of the face to communicate negative feelings like dread or unease. Or we can do sweat. Now this can have a different feeling to the sweat drop, where having a character sweating can make them look concerned or worried or stressed. Then we can do things like replace the pupils with symbols like stars, love hearts, to show them feeling particularly awestruck or particularly positive about a given thing. You can even swap them for dollar signs and have the sparkles or love hearts or dollar signs extend beyond the face. Then we can give them a cat-like expression by giving them a mouth that has a split lip in the middle of it. We could lower the eyes like this to make them look smug and mischievous, or we can widen them and make them look playful. We can also add strokes across the cheeks, towards the edges, and across the nose to indicate blushing or embarrassment. We can also add tears coming from the corners or the center of the eye to communicate crying. This can go well with smiles, frowns, or fear. Whatever it is, you can show an extremity of emotion, and don't forget, when you really cry, it comes out your nose. Now, just like before, when we made the pupils much smaller, you can also make them much larger. This can be a way of having a character look awestruck or having them give, puppy dog eyes or a lot of different things where you want to communicate someone who is wide-eyed, but not intense, like being fearful or angry. This is more for things like sparkles or wonderment or awe. And it's a really good way of showing a character who's giving someone sad puppy dog eyes. Just give a bit of a quiver to the lip or a sad mouth. And those are just some of these expressive accessories you can add to the face. There are literally an infinite number. This is just a demonstration of them. Now, let's show some of these in practice. We're going to start with 3 neutral faces. One, a girl with short hair. Another, a girl with very long hair and some fake animal ears on top. And finally, a gentleman here who unexpectedly looks like Dawson from Dawson's Creek. So it's accidental, but I am going to run with it. This character's name is Dawson. Now the first expression we'll try with these characters is going to be anger. So we'll wipe out the current face, and now we'll furrow the brow. We'll pull the nose up, And we'll pull the eyes up from below as well. We'll tighten the mouth and pull it up towards the center of the face. We can pull the corners away from the center of the face, remembering that with anger, the lines of motion typically go towards the center between the eyes. But as they move away, they radiate away from that point. Now, with the girl in the middle, we'll make the eyes narrow into the center of the face. We'll widen the mouth and show the teeth. We'll give the mouth an irregular shape to give it more intensity. And we'll make the irises smaller to make the eyes look more intense as well. We'll add some lines to the center of the face, around the corner of the mouth to really show that extremity. Don't be a coward and avoid putting lines on a face to show emotion. For Dawson, we're going to furrow the brow, and we're really going to push them into the eyes. We're going to lower them down, open the mouth in a really irregular way, and we'll pull the nose up and wrinkle it between the eyes. And now for disgust. For the girl on the left, we'll lift the eyebrows up in the middle, we'll widen the eyes, we'll narrow the irises, and we'll purse the lips up and out towards the upper corners. We'll add some lines under the eyes to increase the idea of intensity or stress. And for the girl in the middle, we'll give her a sense of disgust by narrowing the eyes and giving her a kind of annoyed expression. We'll lift the mouth up and purse it in towards the corners of the face, almost like it's angry. We'll narrow the eyes and furrow the brow a little bit, and add some lines under the eyes and narrow the irises as well. Then, for Dawson, we'll widen the eyes, lift the brow up, especially in the middle, and then we'll have him look down. We'll pull the mouth down towards the corners, but still keep it fairly narrow to communicate that disgust. Next comes fear. Now for the girl in the middle, we'll widen open the mouth, making sure to keep it irregularly shaped. We'll widen the eyes, and we'll lift the eyebrows in the middle. We'll shrink the irises, and we'll purse the mouth up a little bit from the bottom in the middle. We'll add some lines, not just around the eyes, but also around the irises as well. For the girl on the left, we're going to open the mouth wide, and the eyes wide as well. Again, we'll narrow the irises and lift the eyebrows up in the middle. And then we'll make the center of the eyes into hard little dots. And we'll add some lines under the eyes to give them more intensity to the expression. Now for Dawson on the right, we're going to widen the eyes and add some lines under the eyes. We'll lift the eyebrows, and we'll have this character looking up as though something terrifying is above them. We'll clench the teeth, and we'll push the corners of the mouth down and out, and push the middle of the mouth upwards a little bit. Now on to happy. We're going to draw on the girl on the left, and we're going to widen the mouth out really far, and we'll make the mouth as big and wide in a big, slow, gentle arc downwards. So not too much of a sharp corner towards the bottom of the mouth. And we'll widen the irises and make them shiny. We'll make the teeth visible as a big, simplified bar, and we'll lift the eyebrows up in the middle and move them up the face a bit as well. For the girl in the middle, we're going to close the eyes and narrow them to just the eyelash line along the midpoint. And then we'll arc them upwards to communicate that upward movement. We'll add some creases for the eyelids, and we'll have the eyebrows, rather than arching upwards individually, tilt up more in the middle. When we combine this with a big wide mouth and a big bar of teeth, we'll have an expression of laughter. We can even push the nose up a little bit. And now, for Dawson, on the right, we'll do a big silly smile, where we'll put the smile up at the corners of the mouth, but we'll keep the middle part of the mouth very long and straight. And this is the kind of smile you get on people who have a sudden yet intense appreciation for reggae music and snack food. And now, we'll draw them sad. We're going to purse the lips upwards, and we'll lift the nose up as well. We'll lift the brow up in the middle, and possibly show a wrinkle of it being pushed together as well as up. We can even draw the irises as being a bit wobbly and have some start of tears in the corners of the eyes. We can add some lines under the eyes to show intensity, and a few lines under the lip to show the chin pursing upwards. Now for the girl in the middle, we're going to draw the nose from a slightly lower angle. We're going to make the mouth tilt downwards at the sides, and we'll narrow the eyes and push the bottom of the eyes up a bit. We'll lower the eyebrows and pull the middle bit up, and then we'll add some tears coming down the face and hanging off the bottom of the face. We're going to add some wrinkles to the tops of the eyes and maybe a bit of blush to show the intensity of that emotion. And now, for Dawson on the right, we're going to narrow the eyes towards the outside edges, and we'll lift the eyebrows up. And we'll lift them especially in the middle. And then we'll have the mouth get broad, but turned down slightly at the corners. This essentially makes the Dawson's Creek meme, which was an accident, but now that it's happened, I am fine with it. Lastly, we'll show surprise. This one is the easiest. We're going to open the mouth wide, pulling mostly the top and bottom points, and we're going to open the eyes wide. We can narrow the irises, and we'll lift the eyebrows up as high as we can, and give them both upward arching shapes. We can also purse the lips in, as well as widen the eyes on the girl in the middle, and for the gentleman on the right, we'll give it an asymmetrical mouth to express and show a confused surprise. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how the shoulders can play into communicating the expression. So if we have a gentleman on the right, Dawson, and we place the shoulders down and far away from the head, this will give the impression that someone is shouting angrily over a crowd to try and get attention, that kind of thing. Or if we lift the shoulders up and twist the body, we can show that someone is angry and embarrassed, like someone's busted in on them in the shower. If we show the shoulders as being broad or from a low angle, we can then show someone who is not just angry, but they're intimidating someone. Or we can do the reverse. We can show someone from a very high angle with the shoulders and neck coming up past the jawline, and that'll communicate someone who is striving or struggling up against something to give it a more combative edge, a more challenging mood. And we can also show these variations with someone who's smiling. So if we take the girl on the left and we raise her shoulders up, with this we now have a really excited expression, like someone that's just giving her great news. We can tilt the body forward and pull the shoulders back to show someone who's happy and inquisitive and interested in something that they really like. We can even have them from a low angle popping out through a doorway. Each of these shows a different way that expression can manifest and communicate without changing what's on the character's face. Now, with that done, let's do a demonstration of a simple piece that is entirely driven by two characters and their interacting facial expressions. Now, just quickly, before we get into the speed paint, I want to take a second to talk about this lesson's sponsor, which is Craftsy. While I chat, I'm also going to show you a sketch I did following along with the Turnarounds video series by Gerardo Escamilla. It was really fun, and it was really valuable to get insight from another professional. I know historically I've personally struggled a lot with getting real expressions myself, and with that, just like everything else, what really helped was casting a wide net of education. Taking information from as many sources and influences as you can gives you a really well-rounded base of skill to draw from, which is why places like Craftsy are just so valuable. Craftsy is an incredible platform packed with high-quality classes taught by real artists who really know what they're on about. Whether you're sketching for fun or building a professional portfolio, their drawing and illustration courses break things down in a way that actually makes a lot of sense. One of the things I really love is you can learn your way. You can pause, rewind, practice all at your own pace. And since you're watching this video, I know you're probably fairly serious about leveling up your art. Meanwhile, my focus may be drawing and illustrating, but Craftsy has a lot of classes on everything from quilting, sewing, yoga, fitness, home decor, writing, and just a whole bunch of other things as well. So if you're ready to take your expression game and every other kind of drawing game, or yoga or knitting, to the next level, what I'd recommend, pop over to Craftsy at craftsy.com, join in and become a member of the thriving community over there. As a special offer, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49, and this is valid for new members only. Now, with that done, let's start by putting in the characters. Now for this one, I want to have a larger gentleman, big and muscly, but being very sort of put upon and sort of put off by a smaller character who's very sort of romantically aggressive. Initially it was going to be the other way around, but I started to sort of mix it up a little bit, and I think that sort of worked. So first thing you can see here is I've got my two characters, and I'm sketching in different colors. This is a great way of keeping track of who's who when the sketch gets a bit messy and you've got multiple subjects in there. Primarily, you can see I'm pushing first with the body language before I get the faces down. I've got him pushed off to the side of the frame and her really invading that space, that line of motion coming up and in towards the center of the frame. For the expressions, it's going to be fairly straightforward. I'm going to have him looking a little surprised, and I'm going to add some sort of blush and sweat to that. And then for her, I'll have her fairly calm and relaxed to contrast this and have a very sort of smug, relaxed expression. So you can see here, as I'm starting to nail that in, I've got her eyes narrowing in, and then I've got the eyebrows coming up like a smile, but lifting up a little bit more in the middle, and then the mouth is wide and closed. And that's sort of going to create a very smug expression. And once that's done, I just have to tune in some of the details. So you can see here, I'm going over things like just the base shapes of the clothing, just get everything right up to a point where there's enough information there for me to go over and use the ink over the top of it without feeling like I'm inking over empty air. So I don't have to worry about getting this sort of too tight. I just need to get it to a point where there's no missing information that I'll have to be sort of making out of whole cloth when I get to the inking phase. So from here, I'm just tuning things in and adjusting various bits of the sketch, adding things like ears, adding a bit more volume to the top of her head there. That's one thing I do need to work on. I'll quite often not add enough volume to the top of the head. I'll have the eyes halfway up the head, but then they should actually be for the total length of the head a little bit lower, because I should be adding a bit of body to the top of the hair. And now just refining in some of those details so it's all sort of nailed in. Since she's going to be the center of the frame, I'm going to give her the lion's share of the attention and detail, so things like getting the hands right. And then for the gentleman on the right, I'm going to have basically his face be the only part of him that's terribly detailed. The rest of them are deprioritized by not having the hands be visible. Having visible hands is really sort of a attention-grabbing thing. Hands are a really expressive, important part of a figure, just as much as the face. So if you show them and include them, that's going to draw attention. Whereas I want this to all be about the girl's very sort of aggressive expression. And a bit more sort of to the hair there. Someone mentioned that this, needed a bit more sort of sense of romance. So I've, to the table there, to really sort of instill that sense of undeniable romanticism, I've added a tin of Folgers coffee. If you know, you know. And now, just fine-tuning where I want some of the things like the hair splits to be, and making sure I really sort of nail in the eyebrows. I do keep forgetting about eyebrows. Now I can move on to the inking. Now this is a very mechanical phase. I'll just go over with the same brush that I was using for the sketching, but I'll put the smoothness all the way up because I have a bit of a shaky hand. I'll just go over and just add in all the ink. And once I've done that, I'm going to go over with another layer and add in a bit of line weighting to all the darkest little bits. This is how I do essentially ambient occlusion. But I'm doing the ambient occlusion in the inking layer instead. And so with all of that done, I can then move on to the flats. Now I'm also going to add a bit of a sort of thicker outline to them, just so I can carve them out of the background a little bit more. And then throwing in the flats. Again, I'm not going to go with outlandish colors, I'm just going to go with some fairly basic stuff. And for the background, I'm just going to make it look like a cafe, so I'll have just some very, very simplified, alluded to parts. So things like one of those boards you have in the background of the various sort of things, like a horsey or a car. And then just sending it back, and I can start on the shading. Now I'm not going to worry too much about whether the shading is too light or too dark. I've got a great way of doing the correction to the shading layer, so for now I'm just marking out where I want the shading to be, and I'll correct the color and lightness a little bit later on with a bit of an easy step. It's very sort of time saving. I've even got a little YouTube short about it, if you're interested. It's just a really good time saver. It'll get you about 90% of the way there. It's just a lot quicker than sort of selecting each shading color by getting the color you're shading over and then darkening it and hue shifting it. This sort of does that for you a bit. And so I'm just using, again, this is the same, all the same brush. So my sketcher is the same as the one I use for my shading, which is the same as the one I use for my inking. It's just essentially it starts as the soft airbrush, but I put the edge hardness all the way up and put the density all the way up if it's not all the way up already. And so now I'm just adding a bit of a blush to the gentleman on the right and the lady in the center, and then adding a bit of shine. Now I'm doing the shine in just pure white, and I'm going to darken it a bit later. I'm just marking out where I want it to be, and then I'll get the color right in a little while. You notice I do this with a few things where I won't get it right, with the right color, right tone all at once. I can break it down for myself and just concentrate on one thing at a time. So getting the shading in the right place, getting the highlights in the right place, and then I can tune the colors and darkness. And so the image is getting to largely complete. So I'm just going to do a few little bits of post-processing, like color hierarchy and a glow there, and we're done. And you can see how much of what you see in an image can be based around expression. The image I've got with these two characters here is an image about a relationship. It implies a narrative. It implies there is something going on pre or post this, and that gives it so much more than just being a really cool picture. So just when you get the opportunity, always add narrative elements or implied narrative elements to your images where you can. Now, if you like the draw along and you'd like to do your own one, again, I've got my 1:1 speed draw along video series that you can pop into here and do them. They range from about an hour to about 2 hours. And if you like other tutorials on how to do various things like how to draw the body, how to draw the heads, I've got a whole bunch of them in this playlist over here. And if you like what you see and you'd like to see it more often, or you'd like to support the channel in other ways, like, subscribe, join the Patreon, which would be great. And if you have had a go at the homework sheet, that's going to be linked in the description as well. I'd love to see it if you pop into the Discord and post it there. I look over all of them. I can't do feedback on all of them anymore. The numbers have gotten vastly out of control. My optimism was deeply misplaced. But either way, I'm in there fairly often. I'd love to see you. I'm in the VC relatively often as well. So if I do run into you, it'll be great to chat. Any questions you've got though, or video ideas, pop them in the comments down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye.